There's a moment every longtime comic reader knows. You're standing in your local shop or you're scrolling through your pull list, and you all of a sudden realize that the excitement you once had every week is just gone. That feeling that you used to pull you back week after week, it's just slowly turned into some kind of habit, like you have to do it. It's not love, it's just habit.
And I'm addicted, so I can't quit.
And underneath that habit is this growing suspicion that none of it really ever matters. Because in 6 months or 2 years, someone is just going to push a button and clear the board anyway. On to the next initiative or the next big event.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
DCKO just finished. And once again, right on schedule, we're watching the rinse and repeat cycle that's been defining DC since Crisis on Infinite Earths. A massive, universe-altering event that promises that nothing will ever be the same after this. And then they hand the keys to Deathstroke and Lobo for the next initiative.
Disappointed!
Maybe now Bruce Wayne's just a family man, and he's got all of his kids all around him at the same time. Multiple Robins. Imagine the dynamic. Or maybe they already did, and it was a web series. But here's actually what I want to talk about. It's more of a question about what makes stories actually work. You know, recently I finished watching the Dark Tower movie, and thankfully I have the entire Dark Tower book series, and it made me go back. It made me realize that Stephen King built one of the most sprawling, interconnected universes in modern fiction. If you go really deep into the Dark Tower series, it's something like 10,000 pages, by the way, so like I said, you can go deep. You all of a sudden start finding threads that connected almost everything King ever wrote. The energy at the center of his universe that everything else rotates around. From The Stand to Insomnia. At one point in the story, King himself actually becomes a character. So you start to wonder, what came first? The idea or the story? Was it something that just is ever evolving, already in his mind? And when you finally reach the last sentence of the last page of the last book, it closes with the exact same line that the entire series started with. The end is the beginning. The loop is the point. When you first read it, it can almost feel like a cheat. But after you sit with it, it feels earned.
Nice.
Because everything that Roland lost along the way mattered. It stays lost. The loop doesn't erase the cost. It amplifies it. It just means that the story's bigger than any single telling of it or any single reading of it. That's the difference. King's universe connects through craft and consequence. DC's universe resets through editorial convenience. One of them makes you feel like the journey matters. The other trains you, slowly and reliably, to feel like it doesn't matter at all. Don't worry about it. If you don't like the way this is going, wait 6 months and it'll all just reset.
You serious?
But this is the thing that I keep coming back to. Something is happening in the Absolute universe, and I wasn't expecting it, especially in Absolute Batman.
Oh my God! Wow!
When you strip Bruce Wayne of the money, the privilege, the manor, the arsenal, all the things we've quietly accepted are a superpower.
What are your superpowers again?
I'm rich.
What's left? Well, Scott Snyder's answer is a guy that's driven by grief and the stubborn, almost irrational belief that he can stop the next kid from going through what he did. And it's not a mugging this time. Mass shooting. Right from the first issue, that reframing had my attention because it felt like a premise someone actually intended to live inside for a while, rather than abandon it the moment a crossover event came calling. And in some ways, it felt like that's what DCKO was actually planning on doing. This is what consequence looks like in comics. Not death necessarily, not shock value. Just the sense that the people creating the story actually mean it. Batman Year One, The Watchmen, The Long Halloween. We don't keep coming back to these stories again and again year after year because we forget the way the story goes. Or we forget what happens. We keep coming back because they're so good, they never need to be reinvented. The Absolute universe seems to understand that. The heroes live in a world born of Darkseid's energy, and from page 1 in the very first comic, they are the underdogs. No safety net, no reset button in sight. And you know that the clock is ticking because this isn't the main line. And honestly, that changes everything about how the entire story feels. But here's the part that also terrifies me, because we've seen this movie before, and I'm not talking about a good one. Scott Snyder had an entire story planned when he sat down for Absolute Batman. A contained vision with a beginning, middle, and an end. And it was working. It's working so well that DC is paying attention to the sales figures. And we all know what happens next. The Batman Who Laughs had a genuinely unsettling debut. Snyder found something real in that character, something original. And then DC looked at the numbers and started slapping them onto everything until there was nothing left to find. The concept was completely hollowed out by the time they were done with it. Bro, I'm just waiting for an Absolute Batman Fortnite skin at this point.
Hey, bro, come on now, dog. Come on, man.
And none of that is a creative decision. That's a sales meeting dressed up as storytelling. And this is where the real problem lives. Not in the characters, not in the universes, not even in the events. The problem is what happens when corporate machinery gets a hold of a genuinely good idea, and they decide the most important thing is how long they can keep selling it. Think about what King's expanded universe actually looks like once the machine took over. The It reboot movies, they were good. Dr. Sleep, solid, actually underrated. Welcome to Derry, it had its moments, some elements that you could tell there was definitely corporate machines behind it. For the few of us that actually watched Castle Rock, that was when the wheels absolutely came off. Every step away from the original creative energy is another step towards something that exists not because anyone had a story to tell, but because someone decided this IP still has money to extract from it. When you keep digging for gold, eventually you're just muddying the waters. The same machine looked at what Marvel did with Deadpool and Punisher and decided Antiheroes were the gold rush. Everybody's excited about Jason Momoa coming out with Lobo. Well, we better make Lobo the first issue on the next level. On paper, it may look like some kind of bold creative vision, but in practice, it just looks like trend chasing. But then here's when you get a creative guy like Skottie Young. He comes in and blows this entire narrative out of the water. I first decided to make this video when I heard Lobo was going to be the first one out of the gates. And then I read it. Because here's the thing about issue 1 of Lobo. Young knows exactly what every longtime reader is thinking.
I'm tired, boss.
As soon as they saw this book and solicitations. He knows the anti-hero fatigue. He knows the post-reset skepticism. And he knows we've all been burned before. So instead of pretending none of that exists, he acknowledges it, walks straight into it, and says, now what's up, mother fraggers? The opening pages make metatextual jokes about anti-heroes, corporate monopolies, the vapidity of the attention economy. He looks the reader dead in the eye and says, I know, I see it too. That's not only a specific kind of intelligence, that takes some massive confidence. Because that move only works if the book actually delivers. If the first issue of Lobo had been mediocre self-awareness, it would have just come off as pathetic. Kind of like Lana Wachowski opening the reboot of Matrix with 40 minutes of commentary on why they're just doing it because the studio made them. She keeps looking at the camera with tongue in cheek, trying to wink at us that she's just being forced to make sequels, but gives us absolutely no reason to care. We're all just there for the actual movie. We want to see this kick ass. And that's what some of these creative people do. They use this meta commentary as a shield instead of an invitation. Instead of just accepting what we're all thinking, laugh along with it, and then still tell a great story, they hide behind it. You're watching someone process their own resentment and emotional baggage for 2 hours, and then walking out with nothing to hold on to, but laughing at the entire process. Young does something completely different. He makes the joke, steps out of his own way, and then just tells a genuinely great Lobo story. By the end of the first issue, you're not thinking about trend cycles or corporate mandates. You're just thinking about what happens next in the story. And that's what real creators do. That's what corporate mandates can't do, no matter how many data points they have. Young clearly has his finger on the pulse of what readers are actually thinking right now. Once again, DC editorial just proves that their finger's only on the pulse of sales figures. The difference between those two things is the difference between art and product. And that distinction is everywhere once you start seeing it. Problem has never been the characters. It's never been the universes. The problem is the machine that takes every good idea and asks how long it can keep selling it before the readers notice that the tank is completely empty. Absolute Batman is one of the best things DC has published in years. And actually, The first issue of Lobo is a really good issue. I'm really impressed. And I'm genuinely excited about both of them, and also genuinely worried about where it's going to go. Because that's what loving comics in 2026 feels like. Find something that you actually connect with, waiting for the crossover event that pulls the story completely off the rails. Or waiting for that Batman Who Laughs moment, when the machine realizes that what you love can make them some extra cash. It seems like in the world of comics, the reset button is always there, waiting for editorial. And whether or not the creators can keep making work before someone who has no idea what the fans actually like decide to press it.
Get out of here. Get out of here, man.
So much for watching. I hope you liked the video. Subscribe for more. MM out. Peace.